Picture this: someone who was a consistent part of your life, a friend, a family member, maybe someone you considered close, just disappears. No argument, no bad conversation. They're simply gone. And the worst part isn't the absence, it's the not knowing. The way your brain keeps returning to it, turning it over, looking for the thing you missed. What actually happens inside a person who does that? Most people imagine someone who cuts everyone off made a cold, deliberate choice, and sometimes that's true, but more often than people realize, the person who disappeared isn't running from you. They're running from something inside themselves they don't know how to carry in front of other people. Psychologists have found that certain mental states make human connection feel genuinely unbearable. Severe depression, for example, doesn't just make people sad, it makes them feel like a burden. Like every interaction is a debt they can't afford to pay. So they stop showing up. Not to punish anyone, because showing up feels impossible. The withdrawal isn't a statement, it's a symptom. The same goes for shame. When someone is going through something deeply humiliating, financial collapse, addiction, a private failure, they tend to disappear from the people who know them best, not strangers, the ones who matter most. Because being seen by someone who knew the earlier version of you when you feel like a shadow of that person is its own specific kind of pain.
But then there's a completely different category, and this is where it gets more interesting and more uncomfortable. Some people cut others off not because they're overwhelmed, but because confrontation feels genuinely intolerable to them. Not difficult, intolerable. The thought of sitting across from someone and saying, "I'm hurt," or "this isn't working," produces so much internal panic that vanishing feels like the only reasonable option. This often traces back to early life. Children who grew up in homes where expressing a need led to punishment, dismissal, or emotional withdrawal from a parent often develop a quiet, deeply buried belief. Vulnerability is dangerous. Don't show it. And if a situation starts demanding it, just exit. No conversation, no explanation, silence. Every time that strategy works, every time someone escapes the hard conversation and nothing terrible follows, the brain files it away as a solution. Over time, it stops feeling like avoidance and starts feeling like self-preservation. The two become indistinguishable.
Now for the part that's harder to look at directly. Research has found that some people who repeatedly cut others out of their lives share specific characteristics. They tend to experience less guilt than average. They view relationships more in terms of what those relationships provide, usefulness, entertainment, status, rather than genuine connection. And they feel very little internal discomfort when those relationships end. For most people, ending a close friendship, even one that needed to end, comes with grief. Some ache, some doubt. For this particular group, that response is significantly quieter, not because they're villains, but because their emotional wiring genuinely processes loss differently. And what research found about repetition is worth understanding. Every time someone cuts a person off and feels relief instead of guilt, that outcome gets reinforced. The behavior becomes more automatic, less considered. What once felt like a drastic choice gradually becomes a default, the first tool they reach for when something gets complicated.
There's one more layer that rarely gets talked about, and it might be the most disorienting one. Some people who go silent have fully convinced themselves they were the ones wronged. Memory is not a recording, it's a reconstruction. And under the right emotional conditions, the brain will quietly revise a person's own history to make their story more bearable. The conversation gets reordered, details shift. The other person's actions look worse than they were. Their own role shrinks. By the time they go silent, they're not abandoning anyone. In their own version of events, they're finally protecting themselves. There's no guilt to find because, to them, there's nothing to feel guilty about. They've already accepted their revised edition as the truth. and that version doesn't require them to explain anything.
So where does that leave you if you're the one sitting with no explanation? The silence almost certainly reflects something in them, their wiring, their history, their limits, far more than it reflects something in you. The urge to find what you did wrong makes complete sense. That's how people are built. We look for causes. We look for things we can fix. But some silences don't have a fixable cause. Some people leave because they're drowning. Some leave because the relationship required something they were never capable of giving. And some leave because, for them, disappearing was always easier than being honest. The silence wasn't the truth about you, it was the truth about them and what they couldn't face when things got real. If this gave you something to think about, a like and subscribe genuinely appreciated. More videos are coming on the hidden side of why people behave the way they do. Thanks for watching.